The patient in front of you is bleeding from their eyes. You have been a physician for 20 years. You studied in Bologna. You memorized Galen. You know exactly what is wrong. You are completely, catastrophically wrong. The year is 1347. A Genoese trading ship has just docked in Sicily. The sailors on board are either dead or covered in black weeping lumps the size of eggs. The port authorities order the ship out of the harbor immediately. It is already too late. Within 5 years, somewhere between 30 and 60% of Europe's entire population will be dead. That is between 25 and 50 million people gone in 5 years. And you, the doctor, will be one of the last people standing between them and death. So what do you actually do? First, you need to understand what a medieval doctor believed. You did not think in terms of germs. Germ theory would not exist for another 500 years. You thought in terms of balance. The human body, according to the ancient Greek physician Galen, contained 4 substances called humors: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile. Health was balance, disease was imbalance. This was not superstition, this was the cutting-edge science of 1347. It was taught in universities, it was debated by the finest minds in Europe. It was also completely useless against Yersinia pestis, the bacterium that causes bubonic plague. So when a patient arrived at your door with swollen lymph nodes, called buboes, in their groin, armpit, or neck, here is what you did. You checked their urine. Color, smell, consistency. This was your primary diagnostic tool. A thick, dark urine indicated a dangerous imbalance of black bile. You checked their pulse. Not for the reasons a modern doctor would, you were listening for the rhythm of their vital spirit. You looked at their astrological chart. This was not optional. The medical faculty at the University of Paris officially declared in 1348 that the plague had been caused by a triple conjunction of Saturn, Jupiter, and Mars in the sign of Aquarius on March 20th, 1345. This was the consensus of the most educated men in Europe. Then you recommended bloodletting. You would open a vein, usually near the bubo, and drain blood from the patient. The theory was sound by the standards of the time. Restore the balance, remove the corrupt humor. What you were actually doing was weakening an already dying person. Here is the strange part. Here is the thing that should stop you. Some doctors knew something was wrong with their theories. Ibn al-Khatib was a physician and scholar in Granada in 1349. He watched the plague move. He noticed it followed trade routes. He noticed it spread between people who had contact with each other. He noticed that isolated communities, monks in remote monasteries, people quarantined on islands, did not get sick. He wrote a treatise arguing that the plague was transmitted by contagion, by contact, that something was passing from person to person. He was right. He was also accused of heresy for contradicting the miasma theory, the official view that plague spread through bad air, and eventually imprisoned. The man who had the correct answer in 1349 paid for it. What did your average plague doctor actually wear? If you were one of the specialized plague physicians hired by cities were so desperate they were paying doctors enormous salaries just to show up, you wore the costume, the long dark robe, the wide-brimmed hat, the gloves, the cane used to examine patients without touching them, and the beak. The famous bird mask of the plague doctor was stuffed with aromatic herbs, lavender, camphor, dried flowers, spices. The theory was that bad air caused the plague, and good-smelling air would counteract it. Here is the accidental brilliance of that mask. It kept the doctor's face away from the patient. It created distance. The gloves prevented skin contact. The robe covered the body. The plague doctor's costume was, entirely by accident, a crude form of personal protective equipment. They had the right instinct, completely wrong reason. By 1349, doctors across Europe were writing frantic reports. They compared notes, they argued, they tried everything. Some prescribed a diet of figs and filberts before breakfast. Some recommended avoiding baths because open pores let in bad air. Some prescribed sitting in a sewer because a worse smell would drive out the plague smell. One recommended sitting between 2 large fires. None of it worked. But here is what did, accidentally. The cities that implemented quarantine survived at higher rates. Venice created a system in 1377 where incoming ships had to anchor offshore for 40 days before anyone could disembark. The Italian word for 40 is quaranta. That is where the word quarantine comes from. The doctors who pushed for isolation, who restricted movement, who created barriers between the sick and the healthy, They were operating on a wrong theory, but producing a right behavior. By the time the first wave ended in 1353, Europe was unrecognizable. The doctors who survived carried something heavier than grief. They had watched half a continent die. They had tried everything they knew, and they had failed. But something shifted. The questions got sharper. The old answers felt thinner. Within 150 years, European medicine would begin the slow, painful turn toward observation, dissection, and eventually the germ theory that would have saved millions. The Black Death did not just kill people, it killed certainty. And from that, eventually, slowly, at enormous cost, something closer to the truth began to grow.